Oklahoma Senior Senator Jim Inhofe is in town today speaking in Broken Arrow, and he was kind enough to join us here at the News on 6 studios. Senator Inhofe, welcome.
Well, it's nice to be with you.
So I first wanted to get your reaction, Senator Inhofe, on the bombings in Egypt. Of course, the attack on the Coptic Christian churches. They are burying people today. Just kind of your reaction when you saw and heard about that.
Well, it's something I'm not really surprised, but the big thing, of course, is what happened in Syria. I mean, it's really huge when you stop and think about the fact that we've, in our foreign policy over the last 6 years, have put ourselves in a situation where our enemies don't fear us, our allies don't trust us, and all that changed in one act, and that act was going ahead and sending the Tomahawks into Syria. So that was something and it was done in such a way that the entire free world was supporting President Trump. And I have to say, the more I'm around that guy, the more surprised I am at how he knows how to handle people, knows how to handle countries, and it just, you know, I was one that back when there were 17 Republicans running, he was number 17 for me. But I'm just in shock with what this guy has done, what he's able to do. He's done, as of this moment, changed regulations, 27 regulations in a matter of, what's it been, less than 100 days.
And so, Senator, we're talking about Syria. Is there a long-term strategy for Syria? Has the White House indicated to senators what the long-term plan is for Syria?
Absolutely. It's the same as it is all the way around the world. He's not going to allow chemical weapons to take place. And there's a reason for that. Chemical weapons are unlike any other weapons. Right now we have terrorists all over, and we are in arguably the most serious threatened situation that we've ever been in. But what's different about chemical weapons is that indiscriminately reaches thousands and millions of people and kills everything. And this is something that we cannot allow to happen, because, you know, it could be our troops out there, our allies out there, and we were right in the point where they obviously were going to start using them again. And we had an administration who actually believed that they had destroyed all of the chemical weapons. Obviously, they didn't. So that's what makes them different than any other kind of weaponry.
Is there a chance that Oklahoma men and women could be deployed to Syria, boots on the ground someday?
There's always a chance of that. And the reason that you have to be vague when you answer a question like that, unlike Obama, we have a president now that understands what the element of surprise is. For example, he was criticized for not allowing someone to know that what he's going to do in Syria, but that completely takes the element of surprise out of it. He made it very clear during his campaign, and clear since he was elected president, that he's not going to go to the media and tell everybody what he's going to do. And that is a mistake, and that would not have worked out. Whoever dreamed that immediately after this took place that the entire free world, every country out there, stood behind him and said he did the right thing. And even Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer came out in supporting it. So he acted immediately, took care of the problem, and it's just a total divergence from what the foreign policy used to be. You know, the saying that has been used, Dave, for a long period of time, all during the administration of Obama, we've gotten in a situation where our allies don't trust us and our enemies don't fear us, because, you know, he would draw the line in the sand and then just walk by without paying any attention to it. That's a different. We have a whole new game now, and this would not have worked. I hate to think it's obvious that they convinced the Obama administration in Syria that they had done away with all of those types of weapons, chemical weapons. And we were saying all the time, no, they haven't. And we were right.
Is it possible Assad could have created more in the last 4 years to that degree on what is said to have been dropped on the people in 2017, just a few weeks ago? Could he have created more in that time?
No, he could not have, because we knew where they were, and there's an effort. It could have been an effort, a covert effort as such, but the previous administration would not go along with it. So he's had the chemical weapons.
As far as President Trump and, of course, Capitol Hill is controlled by Republicans, a big thing that President Trump ran on and a big tenet of his campaign was job creation and infrastructure. How are you and Senator Langford working to see that that directly impacts Oklahomans, that we see the new jobs, that we see the new infrastructure here as well? Because I think every county voted for Trump in 2016.
No, they did. And by the way, let me just say that I couldn't have a better partner in all the things that we're dealing with than James Langford. I mean, he's a real blessing to me. And our committees work strategically together in different areas, so it works very well. Now, you got to keep in mind that my specialty has been in the armed forces. I've been the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. In the other area, I've been the chairman of the committee called Environment and Public Works, which was dealing with all the overregulation that came out from Obama, and also transportation. Now, we did a transportation bill just recently. I was the author of it, and it was the largest transportation bill since 1998. Very, very successful. And now we have a president who said, we didn't scratch the surface because we need, and this isn't all highways, this is going to be everything. And I can't even tell you, delineate just what it's going to be. Sure. But I do know this, that I still chair that committee that I'm going to, transportation. So I'll be right in the middle of it. Well, I can assure you that Oklahoma will get its share. We always have, at least in recent years. And so it's hard to answer the question as to what all is he going to do, because only he knows that, and he's dealing with people who have been successful business people. They know how to do funding, how to put together partnerships, how to do things that have not been successfully done before. And so it's not going to be all just appropriating money. It's going to be a combination of a lot of things. And I'm as anxious as you are, and I can assure you, I've learned to believe this guy. If he says it's going to be $1 trillion program, it's going to be $1 trillion program.
And that's something that, as a senator, you would have no problem authorizing a $1 trillion spending program.
Well, I don't think it'll be necessary to authorize that, because, as I say, he's going to be very creative. You're going to see partnerships. You're going to see funding mechanisms go into place. So I would be, in fact, I can just say unequivocally, it will not be all appropriations or authorizations.
When it comes to Syria, the next action that is taken, if the next action is taken on Syria, would you like to see the president get authorization from Congress?
Oh, I think that would happen. Now, as soon as I say this, then all of a sudden they may respond in a way that is different than I think they're going to respond. I think all of a sudden they're back there right now. I'm talking about the Syrians. They're behind closed doors. They're talking with Russia. They're a little bit surprised that Russia didn't take a different position than they took. They know that the president notified Russia in advance so that they could get people out of the area. And so it's not as if we've done something that is just against Russia. We just said what we are going to do is end chemical weapons in the world, and we're going to now be in a position to do that. Now, if the president came along and found he had to go and do something, and he didn't have the time to go and tell the whole world what he's going to do, then he would do that. And he's within his constitutional rights to do that. I anticipate that will not be the case, and that he will be coming probably in closed session to our committee in the Senate, in the House comparable committee, and talk about what's going to be necessary to in the case not just of Syria, but of all the other areas that we have. Iran is one of the most serious right now. I think if you single out one real blooper that happened during the Obama administration, it's what they did with Iran. And for John Kerry and for the President Obama to make the statement that we now have them on our side, they have made all these agreements, it's just laughable. In fact, when someone was saying the other day well, you're talking about 50 Tomahawks, you're talking about $50 million. Let's stop and think of what they did with Iran. Iran is the funding source of terrorism around the world, and they gave them $100 billion. So you stop and think about that. And that's, admittedly, they even admit that they're using that to rebuild their military. Our number one threat, probably.
You have mentioned Iran, you've mentioned Syria. As far as North Korea goes, what would you like to be seen done there with that regime in Pyongyang?
Well, I would hate to say that I'd say something that would interfere with what the president's plans are, but you got to keep in mind, there's one big difference between North Korea and the rest of the threats that we face, and that is it's run by a mentally handicapped individual, someone who he's totally unpredictable. That's the word that the military will tell us. We don't know what this guy's going to do. He's mentally deranged to start with, and he's going to be, he's building up something right now. Every time he fires a nuclear, that's something that he has sworn not to do. It's illegal. It's contrary to all the things that he has signed, and yet the last one reached all of our allies in terms of its range. And I would think that it won't be too long that he'd be able to reach a range that would be continental United States. That's a scary thing. I mean, yeah. As tragic as it was in 9/11, you stop and think if that would take out a whole city like St. Louis or something like that, and people should realize that this guy's capable of doing that. Mutual assured destruction means nothing to North Korea.
I wanted to ask Senator Inhofe, you've talked a lot about President Donald Trump and how you've gotten to know him. What's something that you've come to know about him that maybe a lot of voters, a lot of Oklahoma voters wouldn't know? Well,
for one thing, he gets criticized so unfairly by what some refer to as the mainstream media, and as if he can do nothing right, and yet he's doing things that the American people know are right. He's been able to communicate with America by using a different way, Twitter and other different forms, and all of a sudden people are realizing this is a guy that is the guy for the hour, that now's the time when we need someone like this. So I would just say that the thing that surprised me is that he comes out with statements that sound really stupid, and then they end up serving him well. And so the guy, he may well be a genius in this respect. I would say that the one thing that people don't understand is how smart this guy is. And I didn't think that was true in the very beginning, but I have to tell you, Dave, he just, every mistake that he makes turns out to be something that serves him. And to have been able to do all these over-regulations that are just killing jobs in America in a matter of 80 days, it's not possible.
So an example of a mistake that he's made, or something, like you said, stupid that he said that's come true, what is an example of that that's happened here recently in the...
Oh, I would say that when he talks about all the regulations, this is something that back then people didn't realize how bad they were. Now, I'll use one as an example. The water regulation. Historically, the states have had the jurisdiction of water, not the federal government. But liberals have always wanted the power in the federal government. I mean, this is what, and when I say liberals, I'm talking about real people out there that are serving in the House and the Senate. That's where they want regulation. Well, he's been able to articulate to people that by changing these regulations, you are increasing the jobs in America, and he's already demonstrated very clearly. The water regulation's a good one. If you talk to the American Farm Bureau, they'll tell you that the biggest problems that farmers and ranchers have in America has nothing to do with the Farm Bill. It's the overregulation by the EPA. And of all the overregulations by the EPA, the thing that is the water regulation scares them the most, because it leaves it up to the EPA to determine. In western Oklahoma, I just got back from 2 different trips out there where the wildfire was. That's a very arid part of America. And yet I can assure you, with the federal government involved, that would be a wetland. And just a matter of getting more and more power. He is adverse to this, and he has been able to stop, as I said, that's just one out of 27 regulations that he's been able to change. And that's a shocker for a lot of people.
Finally, Senator Inhofe, I wanted to speak about something that you're familiar with, the Senate Intelligence Committee. Do you think they're going to get to the bottom of what, if any, collusion there was between current Trump campaign officials and Russia? What do you see the end game being?
The end game there, of course, I served for several years on the Intelligence Committee. I shouldn't admit this, but the main reason I got off is because when they have a meeting, you are not allowed to tell the public what went on, and yet 95% of the stuff is stuff that you'll read on the front page of the Washington Post the next day. So that's one of the reasons I got up. got off that committee. I think that they do have a study that is necessary to make sure that they're answering the questions that the American people have. I think, though, that his action in Syria answered those questions pretty well. I mean, he actually did. Yes, he served notice to the Russians that right before they did it, to give them ample time to evacuate, take what actions were necessary. But that's one of the big allies of Russia. And,
so he's not beholden to the Russians because he did that to their ally.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think that there are that many people out there now that are concerned about the fact that he has people he's been in business with who have done business with the Russians, but also with every other country in the world. That's what he did for a living. So I don't think it's concerning people as it was at one time.
Senator Jim Inhofe, thank you very much.
Nice to be with you, Dave.